Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. Please forgive my voice, guys. I have a little bit of spring allergies going on there. But anyway, today we have a very lovely and special guest, Michelle Nooney. How are you? Thank you so much for making it. I'm super excited to talk to you about your Star Wars love for Star Wars in general, your Star Wars art. Please tell our audience what you're all about, where you can see your wonderful work.
For sure. Yes, my name is Michelle Nooney, and so not only do I do Star Wars art, but I also do fan art as well.
Mhm.
It doesn't just go Star Wars, so I kind of just run the gamut. I'm mostly known for my pet portraits too, but here in the last year, I've been getting out there in the Star Wars community and just being recognized out there for my art.
And I think when we interacted briefly in one of these Star Wars groups, which I also post a lot of, make fun posts, and I love highlighting artists, and we kind of stumbled across one other and said, "Oh, hold on a second, I love this painting. I wish I could talk to that person, this artist. Can we start something here? Because I love highlighting artists. Every time I review a Star Wars book, the first thing that I do, I mention the artist because I don't believe there's nearly enough conversation as far as YouTube or social media channels are involved to saying, or Roxana art, my previous podcast that I had. I'm just delighted to see where people are not only enjoying Star Wars, but they're contributing to it through art, and it's just so wonderful that you can make it. Please tell me, how is the art community in general? You're from Wichita, Kansas, right?
Right, exactly.
Please
From the
tell us,
Midwest.
how is the art community in general there?
Everybody is pretty welcoming. Everybody kind of has their, small cliques that they do. It's kind of hard for me a little bit to fit in just because of the realism that I put. Everybody seems to be more abstract,
Mhm.
and I kind of tend to focus more on the realism
Right.
aspect or getting references that way.
Mhm.
But Yes, I feel sometimes I'm a little bit by myself here. A little.
Really?
I do. I
Mhm.
do feel like that, but that's
Mhm.
okay. That's okay.
The reason that I ask, it's as an artist myself, I have a BA in traditional animation. I did like figure drawing, a bunch of things. And we all say your education and your environment in general, it's very much shapes the kind of person that you would become. And I wanted to ask, how is the outside environment, your city culture or state culture, how did your impact your desire to become an artist?
Actually, the love of art actually came from my parents.
Hmm.
And so my dad was a tool coordinator for an airplane manufacturer.
Hmm.
Back in the day, it was called Boeing. And so he would actually draw the tools that were used to put on the airplanes. And so
Hmm.
he had all kinds of drawing implements, and that I would always mess around with. And it had the circles, so you could draw the perfect circles
Right.
or things like that. And then my mom was into ceramics at the time, and so she would paint those. And then together they decided to collaborate and do an oil painting for my brother, which actually started my love of art.
Hmm.
It was a dinosaur painting. My brother loved dinosaurs at the time, and I just was fascinated that they took an image and then they blew it up on canvas, and it
Yeah.
was just incredible. And from there, like, my mom would buy me coloring books and that
Hmm.
type of thing, and then I would always try to draw, color perfectly, try to
Right.
make sure that the image was exactly like the cover or something like that. But I've always been interested in art
That's
um,
awesome.
growing up. Yes.
It's my next question was like, hey, so were your parents supportive? Yes, it sounds like they were because they kind of like fostered that love in art in you. Because, and it's interesting that you mentioned your father. It's going back to the story of Ralph McQuarrie, how he influenced Star Wars, which we obviously will talk about here at length. He also comes from that technical background because, right, he used to work for NASA and military with these technical drawings of planes and military equipment and stuff like this, and how it later translated into something that's far more creative and far more artistic in nature, which is kind of interesting. Do you see that parallel in yourself as well?
I do, and it's crazy because I never really got into the tools so much, but
Hmm.
for some reason, my dad was able to do that. But when I look at a reference photo, I look at it and it's kind of being like the human copy machine. So I just
Right.
kind of look at it and then go back and forth and try to do it. So somewhere in my brain, I've got that ability to translate it to the next page.
Mhm. As far as your background goes, were you self-taught, or did you like also have formal training?
I took art in school. So I did have some kind of, training there, but mostly I did take some classes that
Mhm.
are in my town.
Mhm.
And but it was more or less they kind of just give you a subject, or you brought in whatever you wanted to work on and then you worked on it in class. I think the teacher kind of instructed you on, how you could do something better.
Right.
But most everything that I do is self-taught and trying to figure out how to do it better, looking up YouTube videos, just trying to perfect my technique. My interest that I really like to do is realism.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that I strive for hyper realism. I do appreciate it, but there's also something to be said for something that is slightly flawed. So when
Right.
you can look at it and appreciate the realism in it, but you also know that it's art. I mean, not that that's not art. I hope that that makes
No, I
sense.
think it makes perfect sense. It's as one of my professors has put it. He said, "Look, the idea is not to copy or just mimic something. You got to put yourself in it. The artist has to be in that work, and those little imperfections that you're mentioning about, which a lot of artistic movements throughout history were very deliberate in that, in not trying to imitate perfectly a human form. Even the Egyptian frescoes, right? I'm pretty sure they were very aware of what human form and proportions look like, but they artistically exaggerated them because they wanted to express something. It wasn't just a matter of like, hey, let me just copy it. And you have photography for that, right?
Right. Exactly. And I
Mhm.
think that's what I try to do is I put a little bit of a spin on it, but still try to keep the real elements in
Mhm.
it as well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty fun. So
Yeah, and I think that also probably converts very well when you are selling your art, right? And when your clients are asking for something, they probably would perhaps want their favorite Han Solo character to look like
like
Harrison Ford, because Harrison Ford to fans is Han Solo. It makes perfect sense.
exactly. And I
Hmm.
think what got me into doing it was because I'd always loved art. And then my kids, I have two boys, and they would say, "Hey, mom, can you draw me this or
Hmm.
whatever?" And so I just started drawing, and then they would sit beside me, and it was just kind of entertainment for them. And then I was getting so good at it. Then it'd be like, "Mom, can you paint something on my wall?" And that type of thing. And then I was like, you know what? I really want to take this a bit further. So then I started going to my city classes here and started learning
Hmm.
how to do try to have a little bit more formal training on it. So then I learned about pen and ink, I learned about graphite, I learned watercolor, and then I've dabbled with acrylics, a little bit with oils, but then I started when I discovered color. Then I wanted to do color pencil because it seemed
Hmm.
like a medium that wasn't that was very transportable. Like I could actually take this on vacation, or I could take it anywhere and do it. So there are hardly any color pencil teachers out there. So
Hmm.
that's how I started teaching myself. But based on my watercolor training, I was able to figure out how to mix colors and get
Yeah.
that color theory applied to colored pencils. And from colored pencils, I was like, man, this is taking forever.
Hmm.
So then I graduated to pastels. And I think with pastels, and the pastels that I use, because there's two different kinds, there's oil pastels and then there's chalk like pastels.
Hmm.
So I tend to use the chalk pastels, and it is messy, but I like it because you can work dark to light or light to dark, and it's kind of like oil painting. You don't really have to think about it or worry about negative space
You
so much.
adjust along the way.
Yes,
Yeah, I've
yes.
I've also had some experience off it. Michelle, it's funny that you basically read my mind. Like my next question, sitting here, I'm trying to keep like a loose and casual conversation. I definitely want to ask how she settled in this particular medium, if she has experimented in other stuff. And you're right there, you were saying it all along. It's so funny. I find myself finding a rapport with artists in general, and like it seems like our minds align. And even the example that you bring, which is once again, it's so funny, and I'm not making this up. My mom, the very same way, would sit down and have drawings for me, and it was a form of entertainment because she was like a traditional Russian sit at home kind of like mom, but she did have technical training as a designer.
Uh-huh.
And one day I remember I said, Mom, can you draw me something? And she sat down and she drew Mickey Mouse. And Mickey Mouse is deceptively simple because he's simple shapes and forms. But if you misalign something or get your proportions wrong, he just looks silly looking. He doesn't
Right.
look like Mickey Mouse. And she did the drawing in literally like 5 minutes. I'm like, hold on a second. My mom is an artist? Like, what's going on here? It just blew my mind. And it's the same example that you're saying here. It's just interesting how, like, once again, reiterating that point, your environment shapes the kind of person that you are. And it's your inquisitive minds takes you on a journey like, hey, I want to experiment with this. I want to try this medium. And then gradually sort of you settle into something that you're most comfortable with. Would you say you had the similar experience?
I do. And I've always been trying to strive for realism. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to try this medium and try this medium. And honestly, my first love was pen and ink. So it's black and white. And because of that, it shaped me because I was able to learn gradations. So then I could see the transition from dark to light. And then when I learned color, then that helped me just apply the color to those gradations.
Mhm.
So yeah, but honestly, pen and ink was my first love. MC Escher was a favorite artist of mine. I mean, his works just blew my mind, and he was very technical
Mhm.
too, and how he kind of messed with your mind. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen the staircase that goes nowhere. I mean, it goes up and down,
Yeah.
and it was just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the reason why pastel has settled for me is because I can do something on a grand scale and not have it take 6 months to do. Like I can do something on a bigger scale, like this Han and Chewie portrait that's behind me, that
Right.
literally took 11 days.
Wow,
11,
really?
11 days.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm able to, when clients ask me for something, they don't have to wait very long in the queue, and I'm still able to make money and get things done. And then when I can get stuff to the client that fast, then they don't have to pay extreme prices, or I still feel like I can make money. And then it helps
Right.
them because then they can afford it and I don't have to raise my prices up so
It makes
high.
total sense because you also have to be selective with your time and you have to be strategic how you produce art. Because look, there's this infinite conversations like, hey, I'm an artist, but you got to sell yourself literally in the best possible sense of the word because you want to be compensated for the work that you do. And look, even we're speaking from the higher art perspective, if your piece is not in the public eye and people are not appreciating it, well, then you're not an artist because you're honestly not communicating something. You could have the most amazing canvas sitting in the back of your room, but if people are not appreciating it, there is no sense of communication going on. And speaking of public eye, you have won many awards. You have Merit and People's Choice Awards, plus your art exists in private collection. I've noticed something like Dane Cook, Selma Blair, and Andy Woodhull. How does it feel having your artwork being appreciated by all these like famous people?
Oh my gosh. I think that has also been my goal, is to get recognized, to have these people take a look and take that time says so much to me. And I am so eternally blessed, especially Selma Blair. She came out in 2018 with having MS.
Mhm.
And so she had posted on her Instagram, and I followed her because she's in Hellboy. I love that comic and
Mhm.
that movie. So I was like, I'm going to follow her. So at the time when she came out a few months later, she posted a picture of her on the back of one of her horses. And she thought she was overcome with emotion. She was hugging this horse's neck and everything. And I thought, what can I do to help her? I mean, just being the empathetic person that I am. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to draw her horse for her, being a pet portrait artist.
Mhm.
And so I drew her horse. I tagged her in it, but when you tag somebody in it, it doesn't necessarily mean that they'll see it. And especially a celebrity, as much as they're, getting their Instagram blown up.
Mhm.
So it took a few months. She had actually posted a wall of art in her home.
Yeah.
And so I had got the horse framed and I said, hey, I have the horse's name is Mr. Nibbles. I said, I have Mr. Nibbles.
That's fun. That's a
Uh,
fun name.
right. And I had it framed and it's ready to go on your wall. Within
Mhm.
30 seconds, she came to my Instagram page. She saw it and she said, may I buy him from you? I was like,
Wow.
no, I want to give him to you. So she DM'd me. We exchanged personal information.
Mhm.
I ended up shipping it to her, but as I shipped it to her, I also shipped a portrait of one of her deceased dogs
Oh, wow.
or her son,
Mhm.
and shipped that. She shared that with her million followers at the time, and then my Instagram blew up. Within a few months, I was able to quit my job and be able to do this full time.
Oh, wow. Are you serious?
Yes. So
That is awesome.
I was working as an administrative assistant and
Mhm.
just being able to draw people's pets. That was my gig. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing people's pets. And so when you have to draw people's pets, they want the exact representation of them.
It's a
So
very, very specific request, right? It's so intimate and so personal to people. It's like, and that's something also I'd like to touch upon at greater length. But I totally hear you, like, especially when it comes to pet culture, people like it, you got to get it right because
right.
it's something very spiritual to people, right?
Right, exactly. And so then from there, I had, drawn Dane Cook's dog. I tagged him. He said, sure, send it to him. So, I mean, it's just been crazy. And then I was getting so inundated with pet art that I
Hmm.
was like, you know what? It's starting to feel like a job. So I decided to do the next best thing and take time for myself and do
Hmm.
something for myself once a month. So then I started doing the Star Wars drawings.
Hmm.
And so then people started noticing the Star Wars stuff because it's like my first love, right? And so over the last 6 months, it's just been crazy that I have been really getting noticed for my Star Wars art. And I feel truly blessed, honestly, to
Yeah.
be
If you
noticed
want
for
to
that.
get noticed, Star Wars, because my younger brother and I, we had a gaming channel on YouTube a couple of years ago. It didn't go anywhere. And then pandemic starts. We kind of like, we want to channel ourselves, young people, want to like really invest time into something that will end up something, like you said, like a full-time gig. He starts with his heavy metal channel. I'm like, gee, I want to go my own route too and do something. What should I do? He said, are you kidding me? Star Wars, like it's natural. It's part of your DNA. You live and breathe Star Wars. You got to do this. But, I want to ask you, it's interesting that you kind of express that sometimes something you start feeling like a chore and you got
Yes.
to like channel and center yourself once again and find that creative juice by doing something for you, not the
Yes.
clients. So the question I had is somewhat in the ballpark of what you're talking. Once again, you're ahead of me. You're reading my mind. The things that I want to ask you that I was so excited to talk to you about. But when you're not producing art of any sort, because you're creator, but then here is you as a fan. What place art takes place in your life as somebody who looks on it, not creates it?
Um, can you rephrase that question maybe a little bit?
When you're not producing art,
Uh-huh.
what is the art's significance in your life? Like when you're not a creator of art, you just whether observe it or interact with it in the museum, what significance does it have for you?
Oh, in order for me to get creative juices going, sometimes being the artist, I love being in nature.
Right.
So I get inspired by sunsets. I get inspired by the color in the sunsets or going to an arboretum and seeing the flowers and
Hmm.
seeing exactly different stuff. So I'm constantly looking at things at an artist level to interpret that into my art. It gives me a way to, what's the word, kind of create it or think about how it was done. So then I can interpret that into my pieces as well. I
Hmm.
hope that I answered that. I
No, I
maybe.
think you have. So basically, what I'm getting really, please, feel free to correct me. It almost feels like you still sort of are exposed to art as a fan, right? You interact with it, but you still sort of bring it into what you do. Like you absorb it, you internalize it, and still becomes part of your process as well, right?
Right,
Mm,
exactly.
makes sense.
Exactly.
The next big topic that I wanted to touch upon is, generally in the ballpark of the subject matter. And, immediately I've noticed that you love painting dogs. We see cats, we see some horses, but dogs are definitely there. And I wanted to ask you specifically because you have a very specific execution style, very specific technique, and very specific mental process as I see it, as I interpret it, as your fan, as somebody who looks at your art. So what would you say is the difference between portraiture and illustration?
Illustration, I would say, is you get the embodiment of it. You get the necessary elements of it. A portrait is like you're capturing the soul. I see it more detailed, more lifelike. Illustration just seems like you're just getting the tidbits down. You grasp the concept that it is a dog, but you're not seeing the soul. You're not seeing the heart of the character, of the dog in the piece. That's how I feel it.
Because when I looked at your stuff, I asked you before we started rolling this, a couple of days earlier when we planned this meeting, you give me your links. I'm like, hey, let me go check it out. So I know what I'm talking about. I get exposed to your style, your look. And, oftentimes they say that you see a person's or an animal's soul through their eyes. And when I looked at your dog portraits, and I want to emphasize portraits here, is that each and every one of them is doing something. If we shift away just a little bit from the esoteric stuff, because, spiritual component means different things to people, or other people just simply don't necessarily think about those things. Strictly just looking as an art fan at your pieces, every single portrait is doing something. Sometimes an ear is like this, or it's looking a particular angle, or you cast the light in a specific way that you're able to tell a story there. You're not just showing me a dog like I would in some biology book, like this is what a canine looks like. You know what I mean? Like something to illustrate a point to you that this is what it's supposed to look like. You look at each and every single one of your paintings, something that I just wanted to compliment you on. And there is indeed that esoteric part of it. Component like, ooh, this one feels happy. This one feels droopy. This one feels playful. I love the one with the cat and lemons next to him. What's the deal with the lemons? Like, was it a client's request? Was it just a color contrast that you wanted to create? Because something is there I can't put into words. It makes you feel something.
I always ask my clients to send the best reference photos. So whether it's Star Wars related or it's pet portrait related, send me as many reference photos as you can. And what I tend to look for, other than the fact that that it's clear, I look for dramatic lighting. Because you're not going to, if somebody were to take a piece and a reference photo and it has the sun shining down on your head, well, you're going to have a lot of stuff blown out. So it's all about the reference photo. It's all about the aesthetics of the piece. And if I can look at something and honestly be inspired by it and it feels right, then I want to do it. So I send my clients requests. Okay, it's got to be outside. It's got to be indirect light. It's got to have these different elements. And so I think she was so familiar with my request that she just kind of, added that. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
This is honestly like a dramatic, I could feel it seemed like a 17th century kind of piece, with just the still life in it as well. So it had all those elements in it. And I really, really enjoyed drawing that one. That was
so in other words, your clients' photos that they send you, the reference photos, they also inform what you're going to do with it, the kind of expression or feeling that you're going to relate in the portrait, right?
Right, exactly. So a lot of times my clients, since they're familiar, and a lot of my clients are repeat clients, which is a blessing, but they also kind of know what I'm looking for.
Right.
And since they also like to, what is the word? They like to test me. They say, oh, I want to see if you could do this. And so I always exceed expectations. At least I feel like I do. Yeah. And, so that piece was actually really fun to do. I'd never drawn a lemon before.
It's just, I don't know why. I'm like, oh, here's a cat, here's a lemon. And sometimes I'm a very intuitive person. I don't want to speak for other artists, but I am. I kind of feel through things. They teach you, like I finished animation school. I studied film. They teach you the technical components of executing a story through storyboarding, through script, through, character lines, dialogue and stuff like this. That's all are the instruments that you operate with to create a piece of art, a story. But I always kind of navigate things intuitively. And when I looked at that particular piece, I don't have to rationalize it to myself. Like, I don't have to think about it. It's just there for me. Again, I'm just speaking for myself. Here are the lemons. Here's the cat. Maybe it has something to do for my like crazy love for cats in general, but I'm just looking at it. It's like, oh, that's an interesting combination. It just works, you know?
Right.
But I wanted to ask you, like, divert from the topic just a little bit.
Sure.
And ask you an age-old debate that I'd like us to settle on this podcast. Chewie, is he a canine or a feline?
I consider him a canine, honestly. That's what I think.
He's a canine.
That's what I think. And it was so fun to draw him because of my pet portraiture background that it just seemed like a big dog.
Because they do, right, in the post effects, that sounds that they added, they mixed in, I think, big cats, lions, and bears, something like that, different wild animals, right? They mixed it all into one voice. Right. I noticed also that the Chewie that you portray is specifically episode 4 a New Hope version of Chewie. Because later on, he starts getting a little shaggy and fancy with hair flowing like this. You insist on this particular look. Is it like a personal preference or not?
Actually, I am, if we're going to talk about what my Star Wars loves is, so New Hope has always been my favorite, but this was actually a client's request. And so I did this just client request. So
gotcha.
But I do love I'm very old school, so I do love.
We're so going to get into this. Oh man, I can't wait. We're going to get to that topic. And, I suspect that your love for comics, for Star Wars, has been there long before you started doing art and commissions. So my next question is, what do the fictional characters in general mean in your life? What's your earliest favorite? Do you have like a role model in those heroes?
As far as Star Wars or like...
In general, do you have like, what do those fictional characters, comic books, all these sci-fi movies that we have in TV shows on Netflix, what did they mean to you? Like,
I think I always like those superhero. I think we kind of need that now, but growing up, it was just always you aspire to the hero in it. It makes you want to be a better person. You're always trying to better yourself. You always try to see the humanity in everything. Like one of my earliest superhero fans, I was always a Superman. I always loved Superman. So I loved the way that he was, truth, honest, justice. It was just kind of I wanted to be Lois at the time.
I imagine, yeah.
Right. And I think that I've always looked at those fictional characters because they're always perfectly flawed to me. They might have those superpowers, but they're always downright just human, So.
And when I'm a kid who grew up with American cinema. I'm Russian. I came to New York when I was 14 years old, but the whole world was raised with Hollywood movies, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future, Willow, all these classic 80s films. And I think that particular style or aesthetic of storytelling where there's this sweet level of naivete or like innocence, and like they weren't snarky, the heroes weren't sarcastic, they were very simple black and white heroes versus villains kind of deals. And I think that's what Superman embodies since his origin in 40s, right? Where he's just this true, larger-than-life, classic American hero, and there's no two things about him. You mentioned, yes, he is flawed as a human being, obviously, but you know what he stands for every single time. He's the good guy, right?
Right, exactly. And I even aspire to that, in trying to give people exactly what they want. And trying to give their pets back, or trying to give a client, a piece that means something to them, with the fan art as well. Because it honestly, that when you grow up with that, they mean something to you. I mean, when I saw Star Wars back in the day, I remember seeing Return of the Jedi at the drive-in. That's how long ago. And it had such a profound effect on me that I wanted to become an astronomer. And people say, you want to tell people's fortune? It's like, no, I want to learn about the stars. That's an astrologer, not astronomer. So it did. These movies, they really truly have a profound effect on you. And And
Mhm.
I'm forever grateful for having that with Star Wars.
Mhm. I'm a huge pulp magazine cover art fan, and I love the whole pinup art cultural movement. And when I looked at your paintings, just at least the way it seemed to me, the color palettes that you use, these hot, very like temperate colors, and the way that you exploit them sort of reminded me, and it made me feel like your style would lend itself very well to pulp magazine covers, those classic like crazy villains like Doctor's this, Doctor Who, and Doctor Strange, all of these kind of people. So I wanted to ask you, have you experimented actually painting in different artistic movements, like whether it's Art Deco or futurism, anything like that?
The only thing that I've really I in my art, so I offer like 3 different styles. So if somebody wants to come to me and say, "Well, I like the realism that you do here, but
Hmm.
it's not, I don't really like that. Can we go something more classical?" Then they say, "Well," I say, "Well, then I offer pen and ink." And so they can come to me and I will draw them something in black and white. And it still translates as well and gives them a more classical look, for what they're wanting. And I'm still able to capture the dog's eyes or the eyes and still give it life, just make it black and white.
Right.
And then also, if they don't like that, but they're like, you know what, I'm more fun, I'm more upbeat, then I offer like an abstract type of thing. So then I'll take the colors of the rainbow and
Hmm.
I will create an abstract pet portrait and do some splashes in the background and try to, and they're still fascinated that it still looks like my dog, but it just looks like this fantastic abstract version of it. And I feel like since I've learned all those techniques with all those different styles, like I'm able to satisfy many different clients over many different opportunities. You
Hmm.
don't, if you want real, you want it to look like this, you want it black and white, you want it abstract, let me know. I mean, I would do Star Wars in abstract, of course, just to be different.
Yeah.
But I also, it's not like I'm a master. What is that saying? A jack of all trades,
Right.
master of none.
Hmm.
Well, I actually try to be the master of all of them. It's also challenging to me, and I like the challenge in trying to be able to do and be
Hmm.
well at all the mediums.
Well, if I may compliment you, when I saw your rendition of Ralph McQuarrie's A New Hope poster,
Uh-huh.
just like the use of colors, like, oh, like obviously you respect the fact that there's one artist paying homage to an older artist. It's like I listen to a lot of heavy metal, and you have a younger band pay tribute to an earlier band that paved the way for this particular subgenre of metal, and they would cover a song. You understand that, and with that comes a certain amount of respect and understanding. That's like, hey, she's a fan of Ralph McQuarrie, but now she's trying to do. And I'm looking at this and like, oh yeah, I certainly see how easily you shift between styles. And that's why I wanted to ask you the previous questions. You go like from hardcore realistic painting to something like this, which it almost feels like McQuarrie always was invested in painting things and space and give you mood and atmosphere. And people, as far as people were concerned, he was always like, it was a secondary. His like compositional skills were on point, but he wasn't interested in giving you photorealistic personas. He was
Right.
interested in like, hey, here's a little figure and a little hair. Remember the first female rendition of Luke that he does? That was when Luke was a girl in earlier Star Wars draft, and you still
Right.
pick up on it. There's this innocent vigor and youth. Only it's a lady, it's a girl, and it's just so fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. That piece was absolutely joy. And that piece really, it took me 2 days. 2 days
Really.
to do it. Yeah. Yeah. 2 days. But when I looked at his stuff, I was always fascinated because I liked his rendition of Vader so much because it seemed even more menacing.
Mhm.
Um, some parts of me wish that they would have used that old helmet style, but I mean, I love how he looks now,
It's
but
more angular. It's more pulled. I want to
yes,
say more like extreme angles and more exaggeration. Because in the
yes,
film one, the film prop, it's like it's very symmetrical. It's obviously hearkening to a very real real world kind of a similarity between Nazi Germany helmets or a samurai helmet, whatever
Right.
you will. But in the art, you're absolutely right. McQuarrie really pulls and stretches those ideas to the limit.
And it was very menacing, and it
Mhm.
was very scary. I mean, I can't even imagine what people would think back in the day if that would have been. I mean, he's menacing now, but to use that, it was pretty powerful image. And then what I really liked about it was the fact that there was these bright colors in the background. I mean, I love color. After
Mhm.
being in pen and ink for so
I
long, I was
noticed.
like, right after being in pen and ink for so long, I was like, I got to do color. I got to be
Yeah.
bold. And so to be able to do that in the background was just really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. We're going to start going into Star Wars and comic books realm. But did you, I don't know if you've seen the Star Wars Rebel animated show.
I have not.
So basically, I think you're going to get a kick out of this. So with that specific show, Dave Filoni and the creative team specifically wanted to bring Ralph McQuarrie's art style to life. You look at every background setting, every character design, it basically emulates his style, only
Wow.
with digital animation. And I will be pretty impressed to hear like what you have to say about Darth Vader, because it heavily pulls on that specific look that you're looking for.
Wow.
Yes,
Now
I
you
looked at it first. I was like, oh my God, Ralph, is this Ralph McQuarrie's painting? Like, it just blew my mind. I was giddy. I was like a kid watching that show. I think
I
you would be
will.
excited about it.
I will definitely have to check that out because now you have piqued my interest. I will
Yeah.
definitely check it out.
Look, if we get to do this part 2, I would be more than delighted to have you along. It's like, hey, by the way, have you checked it out? Like, what's your take on this? I would love to hear your thoughts on this. But let's keep it moving and get into the nitty gritty of it. The centerpiece of our podcast. Star Wars and comic books. So I worked in a local comic book / video game store here in New York City for like 13 plus years. I managed the store, and it was always fascinating hearing comic book fans talk about their favorite franchises and heroes with this religious zeal, literally. And I wanted to ask you, why is that? As a commissioned artist, what do you think is the most important to clients, and why they're so devout, like so devoted to their heroes?
I think it just stems from their childhood and probably just looking up to something, bigger than them,
Mhm.
and it makes them feel good and it makes, reminiscent of their childhood. I think, they must have had really good times and
Mhm.
want to get back to that type of
Because
thing.
like when your clients talk to you, I'm sure, and Phil will elaborate on this, it's, they're not fictional characters to them. When it's like, you stand at the comic book store and the conversation goes on for half an hour. No. But Wolverine would really kick Cap America's butt because he can do this and claws. I'm like, guys, these are fictional characters. It means this much to you. To people, it's real. Like, I'm pretty sure when your clients, no, but, I want this detail over here on this. Can you please put the sword this way? I'm sure they do that, right?
They do it, and I just see it as they just have passion for it. They're very Star Wars fans are super passionate. Fan art people are very passionate about their, whatever they're into, whether it's, Wolverine, the Marvel stuff, or if it's Star Wars. And I think that's what even makes it better for me to draw, because I feel that passion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just something that I know is just going to collect dust. They honestly love it and they want it on their wall. And then I feel like it's appreciated that even,
Mm-hmm.
on an even better level.
Mm-hmm. So it's never a question of, when your client is asking for too much, it's like, oh man, he really wants this one. Like, it never like bothers you. Like, you're willing to step out of your boundaries and deliver like 110% to make sure they're happy.
There are some clients, I mean, you're always going to get those type of clients that are type A,
Yeah.
but you have to remember that I'm also a type A. So what I do is if they ask me to do something, I don't usually have a problem with it. I'll send them progress pictures, but they sometimes cannot understand how I'm going to get from A to B.
Right.
And so then they'll say, well, make sure that this is the right color. You're going to make sure that this is, and I'm like, you came to me for a reason. This. So I say, I know it's scary, but you have to enjoy the process
and trust the artist as well.
And trust the process. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
As it goes. But yeah, I usually don't have an issue. Like if the picture, if I feel like I can do it, then I don't usually have an issue with it. It
Mhm.
takes me a little bit long. It might take me a little bit longer, but I usually don't have an issue with it as long as they allow me to be me. That's all.
Right, and they don't come to you and asking for like you paint like Michelangelo. It's like they want painting that looks like Raphael. Like that's not what I do. This is my
Right.
portfolio. This is what my work looks like. Like hey, like let's work together. But now let's talk about Michelle, not as a person who creates for other fans. We're going to talk about you as the fan. What is your earliest memory with Star Wars, and which one is the most significant memory?
Okay, so back to seeing Return of the Jedi at the drive-in, and I remember sitting in the back seat, and I remember seeing it on the screen, and I had the largest crush on Mark Hamill.
Mark
You
Hamill.
know, right? I mean, all the all the little girls did, and with his long shaggy Justin Bieber like hair at the time,
Yeah.
but it was, I just loved the fact that he was the hero and that he was battling, with all that type of stuff. There was some humor in it with Han and all that type of thing, but I don't know, I was just mesmerized by it, the whole
Mhm.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I hear also from a lot of lady fans that for some it was Luke, for others it was like Han because he's that hunk with that V-cut little vest, like that sexual energy that he just
Right.
exudes right on screen, and he totally commands the screen. He's obviously 10 years senior to Mark Hamill, and Ford he just commands a little bit more experience. Even though I thought they were brilliant in A New Hope,
Right.
both of them, because they contrast so well. One is more sweet and naive, this farm boy. You know what's funny is you're saying that from your perspective, you're crushing on him. He's this representation of a beautiful male, but George Lucas insisted casting him because he wanted who looked like a casual village pumpkin, who looked insignificant, and he wanted you to pay attention to his deeds, to his accomplishments throughout the film. But he was a handsome dude, right?
He was, he
Hmm.
was. And the greatest compliment that I had was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago when I was in the middle of drawing this portrait. I decided to post it on Twitter as a progress, and Mark Hamill actually liked it.
Oh man, that's so cool.
Right.
That's awesome.
And then he also liked the tribute to Ralph McQuarrie that I did
He's
as
so
well.
gracious. I love his interaction with fans. He's
Right.
super gracious. He gives his heart to fans. I love him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he always, always, always makes his fans feel super special. And I know that even in the middle of that progress piece, I was just like, the GOAT, oh my gosh, the greatest of all time really is liking my art. I mean, to have that recognition from somebody that I crushed on back in the day, I'm like, what the heck? It still blows my mind. Still
Yeah.
blows my mind.
To me, Mark Hamill's performance and Luke Skywalker was also significant to my childhood because I could always see myself in him. There wasn't anything, especially like a prerequisite or requirement of becoming him. He was a regular boy who said like, I hate the Empire, but there's nothing I can do about it right now. And then he's forced into this unwilling, action, and he becomes a hero. He becomes great through his personal actions, not through the Skywalker name. And he also looked like my oldest cousin. And I don't know why I always associated it. It was like, oh, it's my cousin in the movie. Oh, no, it's not my cousin, but he kind of looks like my cousin. That's awesome. So that I also, came into that. And I'm sure possibly you hear from fans, or every time you talk about Star Wars, that a lot of fans are saying, Star Wars is not what it used to be. Because we live in a Star Wars content has endured through 3 different generations. It's 3 different trilogies. The original trilogy, which has a very specific sensibility about it. Then you had Star Wars prequels, which I would argue are totally very, very different from original saga.
Right.
And now you have the modern age people with modern sensibilities, and you have the sequel saga. So when you hear fans say that, the Star Wars isn't what it used to be, do you feel that it's the franchise itself that has changed, or is it us, the fans?
I think the franchise has changed. I think they've had so many different writers try to do their elements on it that I think that if we would keep some continuity, I think they could all be blended. But then I think that's just, but you have Star Wars content. You can't, I mean, as much as a fan as I am of the originals, I do like aspects of the prequels. I do love aspects of, the later ones,
Right.
but I just think it's the writers. And then the one series that I've absolutely fallen head over heels with is The Mandalorian. I mean,
Yeah.
that actually felt more like Star Wars, the old school Star Wars. It felt like that for me.
Hmm. And, looking at these all different generations and takes on Star Wars, because, I personally believe I've been a fan since 1997 when my dad showed them to me on my VHS tapes. And, I don't like to marginalize directors who, let's say, succeed less than others. I believe that all of them come from a good place, a good heart. They want to entertain us. It just sometimes things don't line up the way we would like them to be. But what would you say, looking at these three different trilogies of Star Wars and just different takes on them, what would you attribute the lasting appeal of Star Wars for American culture, for fans around the world?
Oh, man.
It's a heavy, loaded question.
That is. What would I attribute their long lasting? Because I think back in the day when they first came out, it was something truly new, nothing that had ever been tackled before. I mean, I think before that we had Star Trek, which was great in the day, and that was set out in space. This was just something a little bit more modern feeling. And nobody had ever done it. I mean, we're having these fantastic effects that we had never been seen before, and a storyline that really captivated you. And I think that hit, the parents. I mean, I was back in the day when that hit me, and I was just like, wow. And I just think that because it was so new and so different then, that is, people are still gravitating toward that because it feels good. It's, back in the day when there was less troubles than there are now.
Have to ask you this question. We are literally weeks away from Star Wars, the Kenobi show. How excited are you for that?
Oh my gosh, I am so excited because, for one, John Williams wrote the score. So if John Williams is writing the score, it kind of sets up for, okay, this has got to be good, and so, yes, I'm definitely excited because the way the Boba Fett was, I mean, it was good, but I think it could have been better.
Right.
And so now they, that they really got to rock it out for Kenobi. So yeah, I'm definitely excited.
I'm pretty sure Ewan McGregor also has that same sex appeal that Mark Hamill did in the original trilogy, and a lot of fandom investors like, oh, he's such a hunk, he's so handsome. We love, even like guys, girls, I'm talking about all of us universally. We love his acting, we love his presence on screen. Like, we want the content with him to be like the absolute best, right?
Exactly. I think we all need that right now. Yeah. With everything that's going on.
When you go in with looking forward to the next big Star Wars thing that's coming, do you have like a list of requirements, expectations that you want from it, or are you just in there like for the ride?
I think I'm just in there for the ride because I wasn't sure how The Mandalorian was going to be. I had no expectations. I had no idea of where this was going. And then after the first episode, I watched the first episode kind of went a little bit slow because you're like, is he going to talk? He was a man of very little words. And then the second one, I was like, I'm hooked because it was like the epitome of, I mean, it's a space Western for one. Right. I mean, you kind of hear the jingles of the spurs a little bit. So I was always a John Wayne fan. I think John Wayne for me growing up was the man's man. He also stood for truth and justice and had this honorable character about him. And so I kind of can see this in The Mandalorian and how he is very righteous and very faithful to his following and his religion. And so I went into it with blinders. I totally am appreciative of it. And so that's what I think I'm going to keep doing, is just let it happen as it happens, and then I'll talk about it after. But I try not to have any expectations on
You know, on my podcasts with other boys, like other Star Wars YouTubers that we talk, we absolutely stress that there's so much responsibility and legacy involved with the Star Wars prequels that there are huge amounts of fans of. They are more kind of like they're 30 and under. They're more into that prequel era stuff. And I appreciate when fans enjoy something that I don't necessarily have as much love for, right? But we all understand there's so much baggage involved that we sort of all want it to be the absolute Star Wars content up to date. But I'm like you. I'm also very much, I don't have a set of expectations. I just come in, show me what the story is that you want to tell me, and I'm just going to be the judge of whether it works or not. That's all it is.
Yes, exactly. Totally. Yeah. I'm feeling you.
This is a more of a kind of a technical question because I'm completely clueless here, but I'm very curious. Outside of the Star Wars films, how familiar are you with this expanded universe? That's meaning, you know, the comic books, the novels that have been coming out through years, and the video games. Is there client appeal for those kind of characters?
I have noticed it being. I was always just I'm familiar with all the movies, of course, and then the Mandalorian series. I never did watch any of the animated stuff at all, but being in this community, it's been talked about, and so it gets me fascinated about it. I have had requests to do some, some of that art,
right.
And but mostly it's doing the old school stuff.
Yeah, that seems to be right. The most iconic, the most requested after is like, I want my Han Solo, I'm with Chewie right there.
Or some of the prequel stuff, like as far as like Darth Maul or the, in the Mandalorian, okay, we got Ahsoka, and that type of thing. That's what I'm kind of seeing.
One thing I always highly praise the prequel era for, 1999, I'm a 19-year-old kid going in, and I had expected one sort of story, but we got something different. But there was something that constantly appealed to me was just the artistry that went into it. Doug Chiang, right? You could say a spiritual protege of Ralph McQuarrie. He just delivered some of the most striking canvases I've ever seen anywhere in commercial art. I mean, when you look at like Doug Chiang concept art, prequels, and you look at his stuff, it is just mind-boggling.
Right. I would like to meet him. That would seem, very cool to get to know.
Yeah.
Right. Pick his brain for a little while.
And also when you see him behind the screens, that's another thing that pulls you in as a fan. Like when these people, they have delighted us with their talent throughout the years, but they're so giving and humble. It's like, hey, I wish we did this. When you see him behind the scenes, like the making of the Star Wars prequels, he's fantastic. I love looking at stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. That's pretty cool.
So we did talk about Star Wars, but a huge part of your portfolio and the stuff that you do involves also comic book heroes. Let's talk a little bit about those guys.
Okay.
When you paint a Marvel or DC or any hero, basically when you're working in the spectrum of another artist's creation, do you contemplate how they designed those characters? Why did the artist pick a specific color palette or a silhouette for that character?
I've never even thought about it like that, because I just try to enjoy what they've done and enjoy their creation, their brilliance at the time. So no, I guess not.
Yeah. No, because, it's when you look at something, when I worked at managed a comic book store and you look at the comic book panels on a weekly basis, like Hulk, okay, the part of the stuff that he's green because, like amphibian DNA and frogs and this and that, but why the purple pants? Why is it so iconic? Or like Iron Man, why is it mostly red with yellow accents, right? One of his earlier designs. Like, why is that? And why is it so memorable? Or why is Yoda green with those kind of like pointy ears? He has a very recognizable silhouette, a very recognizable profile. It just always makes me wonder when you look at the beautiful, beautiful art that you do, is like when you are extrapolating something that was done before you, obviously you're bringing your own voice into it. You bring your talent and your skill, but you're doing something that other person created. What's the convergence of ideas there? As you paint, is it ever a thought of like, hey, why are the ears this way? Because you are conscious about it, you're cognitive about it, because in order to have Chewie that you have on the canvas there, or you actually have some other paintings there that you wanted to show us. Could you please show one or two?
Sure. I just finished up this piece for a podcast.
Right.
So this is actually for a Sithcast.
Right.
It's a podcast and it's an exclusive
Mhm.
for them. And I just finished it up. And their only request was that, you know, it needed to be Vader. It needed to be Hayden Christensen's Vader and stuff. So I wanted to make sure
Yeah.
that I did this. This took, if maybe a week or so to
That's
do.
a beautiful piece. Like, see, I love the lighting in this one. Once again, it's such a crucial component to have you
Right.
cast light. Like, it gives you form, but it also gives you mood and feeling behind this. And there's like so much menace in him. But once again, as I'm looking at this, I have a very vivid like recollection as a kid. My first encounter, my feelings when Vader unmasks himself and is like, "Let me look upon you for the last time." And just that little small thing, it might be insignificant to other people, but to me as a fan, I remember how the piece of the helmet protrudes from his neck, and it's almost this grotesque kind of feature where all these machines, mechanical things, are interacting with his face. But you translate it so well, but it also makes me wonder, like, was she thinking about this specific detail? Why the original artist designed it this way? I don't know why. I find it fascinating.
It is
Mhm.
fascinating. I've never really thought about. I just my brain just goes, go with it, enjoy it. That's
Yeah.
always been like that.
Which again, it gives me an idea that you like just approach it intuitively. It's just like
Yeah.
you subconsciously you know what it is, and just like you,
Yep.
boom, it's there.
Yeah.
Could you show us another one? I see another one that you have hanging in there.
For sure. So this was also, this is a print. It's of my original was sold.
Guys, I don't know if you can see it. Hold on a second. Representing here.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
This was also created for Collection Wars podcast as an exclusive, and I debuted this in February along with I did a Han Solo. So this, we decided on this one because you don't see Bausch Leia very often,
Right.
and you don't see her fully in her. I mean, you can get reference photos of her from the waist up, but even the screen captures from the movies are super dark. And I came across a reference photo of a statue that somebody did from NYC, and I was like, I need to draw this. So we decided
awesome.
to do this and give her a little thermal detonator. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, a little bit of detail would be really nice if you could bring it down just a tiny bit. Awesome.
Yeah. So,
but Michelle, you know, now that you bring that, I'm sort of thinking to myself, like, you're right. We never see her full height.
You don't.
In the film, it's always like waist and up, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was very hard to come up with the reference. And I had done so much research on trying to figure out exactly what she looked like to get this exact representation. So I was super happy to be able to do this. And I think this one also took me around a week.
Yeah.
A week to do.
See, once again, I'm looking at Leia's helmet. I remember that very particular vocalizer voice that she has, and she speaks that alien language as she's selling Chewie to Jabba the Hutt. Again, as a kid, I was looking at that very strange looking helmet, and at first I couldn't understand, is it her head? Or is it a piece covering her head? Why is that strange voice? And later on, she's unmasked, and you see Leia like, huh? Like, it was so disorienting and so miraculously foreign and alien to you. Like, it just sparked your imagination as a kid.
Exactly. I felt the same way. But I titled this piece Someone Who Loves You. So I also have,
I love it.
If anybody would like, I can I'll sell them prints from me directly, or you know.
Michelle, we're going to include all the links as I'll like pass through this video. All of your important links will be right there under your screen on the video, so people will know where to go and check out your stuff, and hopefully billions of people will eventually see this podcast. It's good for me, but it's also good for you. But honestly, no, it's just, to me, I feel delighted and honored when I get to speak the biggest artists out there, like when I spoke to Greg Hildebrandt, I was like, my hands were shaking, like, oh my God, he is the embodiment of American commercial art. He's like, 60-year career. I felt just small and humbled. And once again, as I'm discovering about you, you're out there, you're known, and I hope and wish that even more people get to see you. But regardless of what the artists status is, or what my status will eventually become on YouTube. It's not about that. It's like people sharing their common love for Star Wars, and you like channeling that through beautiful art. That's what it's all about. This dialogue, this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that is that actually helps me even love it more. I will have the movies playing on in the background while I'm drawing. Um, this has just really been such a cool outlet for me to be
Hmm.
able to be in this community and be so welcomed from everybody. I
Yeah.
really feel blessed.
Awesome. Continuing on the conversation with the comic book heroes, I just wanted to bring this little kind of like interlude and then ask you a question, if I may. So,
Sure.
I learned a lot about the art of comic books. It was this um, magical thing, untouchable thing when I was in Russia, because we didn't have access to comic books in my small town. I came here, I started working in a comic book shop. And this is where I learned a lot about the pulp era, the early those pulp magazines of the 30s, the golden and the silver age of the American comic books, how they went from the perception of cheap entertainment for kids to mature storytelling, medium. And, how Superman, when you see at the paintings of Superman of September 11th, where Alex Ross painted him looking at all these giant, colossal figure of regular Americans like firefighters and police officers, and he goes like, wow. Or when you look at, Captain America, the way that he's portrayed in the comic books and some of the quotes that he says in this comic, like, I cannot represent the American government. The president does that. I
Mhm.
must represent the American people.
Right.
Immediately, I knew what the American comic book stands for, what that art form stands for. But
Right.
I also wanted to ask you, for somebody who works in that field, who portrays these comic book heroes for your clients. My question is, what do you think is the cultural value that the comic book heroes bring to the fans in the United States and also around the world?
I think it gives them hope. I think, and it teaches our youth there's to strive to be better. I think,
Hmm.
I think as Stan Lee, I really looked up to Stan Lee because of what he tried to communicate through his art. He was very accepting of everyone, every culture. And I think that was so, huge as a child, because you need to be accepting of everybody.
Hmm.
Just because your skin color is different doesn't mean that they're any different. You are the same all the way down to your bones. It's
Yeah.
just your color is different. And I think that's why I looked up to him so much, because he was able to love everybody through that and try to make sure that he showed that in the comics, that it was okay to be different,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, when we start digging into the whole concept behind the X-Men, right?
Yeah.
Kids reaching puberty and start getting all of these, you know, different powers, where in reality these are just representations of dealing with the frustrations of youth, or like you said, being different color, being different orientation, ABC, you name it. And he
Right.
was able to take that classic mythology motif and bring it to more modern audience. Is like, it almost feels like the comic books are serving the same function that the old myth of old age, of whether it's Egyptian mythology or North myth or
Right.
Greek characters, that's what the function is fulfilling. And it's like there's so many role models for kids to look and and emulate.
Right. And even in the Eternals, you have a deaf person in there. When have we seen anybody with handicap as a superhero? I think Stan was pivotal in this, um giving people a voice. And I just maybe in that fueled everybody and gave them, it was meaningful then when they
Yeah.
were a child, and I think that's what they emulate now.
Yeah. Charles Xavier, right? He's in the wheelchair and he's like one of the most badass
Right.
characters out there. The way that one ultra Marvel fan described to me is like, oh, there's like Marvel Encyclopedia and actually rate all the heroes by their level as the mutants and the X-Men. He's a level 4 mutant. He's the ultimate guy. The guy was so passionate because it meant so much to him that a
Right.
person who's portrayed to be in a wheelchair could project so much power and be an authority to other younger X-Men, students. So
Right.
crucial, so important.
Right. And I think we might see him soon, in the next few months, I think.
Really?
I think he might be making an appearance in a movie.
Interesting. Wait. I
Yeah.
totally skipped on that. Like, I'm a huge X-Men film franchise fan. I didn't even know this. Patrick Stewart.
Yes, I
Oh
think
my
so.
God, what? I'm gonna have to Google this. I love X-Men. But in general, I started to understand as I worked and as I sold those comic books to fans, we had to put them like in folders on a weekly basis. People come and get their stuff. That this post World War II, the huge economic boom in America, and these ideals that we can do as Americans, and that idea that we're all in this together and we lift one another and we share in this wealth of this country, of this cultural wealth. And your comic books since those days embodied the greatest ideals that we all should aspire to. Whether
Exactly.
you're an immigrant, you came here 20 so years before and got your green card citizenship, or if you're like 3 months in the country, the potential is there for all of us come in union together and focus on constructive things, on building
Exactly.
things rather than destroying,
Exactly. And I think that is we need that more now.
more than
Just
ever.
more than ever is
Yeah.
just everybody just get along and we just need to be together. And I think that is why we live through the comics. That's why we live through the fan art. It's just a way to feel like,
Mhm.
because I think I've seen when I went to the Star Wars movies and some of the premieres, I see so many people in costume, so many people, and you just forget all about the world's problems. And everybody is a Star Wars fan at that moment, and all the problems seem to melt away.
And you feel connected, right?
You feel connected. Exactly. There's
Yeah.
so much passion in that room, and it
Mhm.
feels amazing.
Mhm. The next question I wanted to ask you is, you know, during the last couple of years, I would say within the last maybe 5, 6, maybe a decade, right? There's a great resurgence of female heroes. We got the Wonder Woman film, we got Black Widow, we got WandaVision, Jessica Jones, which totally just blew my mind. I would say that's my favorite one. So I wanted to ask you, um, do you feel that it's important to celebrate it and put these women heroes on the pedestal and have this diversity in comic book industry?
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. One of my favorites is Captain Marvel. I mean, all the women that were, the Wasp,
Hmm.
Okoye when she was with, Black Panther.
Hmm.
There's just so many of the women that I think are underrepresented.
Right.
And also I would like to see them not be so sexualized.
Hmm.
Why can we not have a strong woman that doesn't have a big set of,
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Cleavage,
Just
yeah.
let her be strong. And just
Mhm.
because she's strong doesn't mean that she is a feminist either. You
Right.
know what I mean? I
It's a
just
balancing act, right?
Yes, it really is. And I like seeing those women heroes for
Hmm.
me. There's just not enough. You know what I would like to see is, on the flip side, in Star Wars, we need a super villain that is a woman. I mean, we've got the Darth and stuff,
That's a good point.
but we need a super villain female that rocks.
Yeah. We sort of kind of have that. Excuse me if I go into the kind of like field which you may not be as knowledgeable, because I'm a huge gamer. So I'll just give it to you the idea that there is such a female character. Now she's called the second sister. There's these character villains in the Star Wars now that they have in the shows, which if you are willing and interested, you start checking out the animated shows, you will see them. They're called the Inquisitors. And there's
Ah,
this second sister, this female inquisitor who's a villain, but it has a very like tragic and broken past. And they sort of humanize her in a video game. It's one of those Star Wars video games called the Jedi Order, which has ultra realistic graphics.
mhm.
Actually, in the color palette, if you Google Jedi Fallen Order cover, in color palette, it's very similar to what you have behind you. A
Ah,
lot of blues, a lot of like gradations of color there. And she's the sort of villain that a badass. She's a unapologetic, like female, but there's also a human component to her, why she is the way that she is.
right. And that would be, I wish they would put that in a movie,
That's the next step.
so we can start seeing
Right.
that, you
Yeah.
know, because
Sometimes, like, if the movies have to play the catch-up games, sometimes I feel like these smaller mediums, like video games and shows, are kind of like more willing to experiment and they try things out. And once they resonate with fans, like, hey, you know what? this kind of picked up. Let's put it in the biggest motion picture that we can with Star Wars, and it becomes a popular idea.
Yeah, because I think we've just had so many male dominated characters that it's time. It's time.
How did you feel about Rey? Like, we can discuss the quality of storytelling and where it went, with Luke Skywalker. That's a whole huge different topic. We will probably save for the next time if willing. But did you enjoy the fact that we had a female-centric trilogy focusing on this young, naive female, which I felt was almost like a counterpart to Luke? Like, did you enjoy that component of the films?
I really enjoyed her acting. I did enjoy the fact, but if I were to pick, I did think that they did it so similar to A New Hope that it was like, oh, it just felt like the same thing, but just with a woman. But who I really felt like was a good, strong character was in Rogue One, Jyn Erso. To me, that character needed to be explored even more. I think she was really, really good.
I totally agree with you. You know what really, really appealed to me was that they didn't give her the boots and a male jacket and it's like, go kick ass. She is a really mature character in the sense that she is a woman who projects strength from that angle. She's not trying to be a dude. She's doing this stuff her own way. And the tears on screen and that she cries and she grieves her father empowers her. That's what gives her strength. And I admired it so much. And like yourself, I wanted to see more of her in the film, actually. I felt like she was a little bit sidelined. Like, I want to see more. Put her more in the film,
Right. And so Rogue One, besides A New Hope, that A New Hope, you can't never go wrong with the original. But for number 2, my favorite would have to be Rogue One, just because of that. It was her acting, and then the way that she does suffer from abandonment, and how she feels like she's abandoned, but she is abandoned with a purpose or because of something. And
Michelle, before I ask our final question, we start wrapping this up. Once again, thank you so much for doing it. I feel honored, and like it's such a pleasure to speak to you. You're such a passionate fan. You seem to know the heart and soul of this franchise. And I just see being portrayed on your paintings. I see the heart and soul in your doggy portraits. They just have so much feeling and emotion. When I looked at them, I wasn't just. I'll be frank with you. A lot of stuff that you see on Instagram and Twitter is like, okay, all right, cool. Yeah, that's a cool picture. I had to pause for a second. Like, what are those lemons doing here? Like, what is this? Why is the ear like this? Like, you led me on an adventure looking at your stuff, and I just really appreciate you. And thank you so much for doing this.
I want to say thank you so much for reaching out to me. I feel blessed to be able to do this show, and I really enjoyed this back and forth.
Thank you.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you. So my final question for you is, what advice would you give to a beginner aspiring artist? And what do you think are the tools or techniques that help build confidence?
Something that I would encourage every day is to draw every day. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes. It doesn't matter if it's 10 minutes. As long as you're drawing something every day, and draw what you love. Too many times people would say, do this, or, do this. Draw what you love, because people will be drawn to your passion. They will flock to it. If you're passionate about it, there's nothing more intoxicating than being around somebody who's passionate about what they love to do. And it just kind of is infectious. So I would say draw every day, draw what you love, and never be afraid to try anything. If you feel like you want to try mixed media, you want to try crayons, you want to try pen and ink, do it. And something that encourages me is just because it doesn't look like what somebody thinks doesn't mean that it's not art. You just keep doing what you love.
Yeah. And to add to this mantra, what you were saying, the Greg Hildebrandt and his wife, after we finished recording our podcast, they joined me in this conversation, and they told me these 3 international students showed them their artworks for critical review. And they said that in each respective art school, their professors told them that it's no good. They need to elevate their skills. And Greg Hildebrandt looked at their stuff and he said, don't listen to your professors. Your stuff is brilliant. Don't listen to anyone. Just because somebody gives you a critique, of course, be critical,
Right.
Always try to like expand your pool of knowledge, or master a technique, and always be receptive to criticism. But don't listen when people adamantly tell you you're no good, you won't
Right.
succeed. You're like sometimes building confidence is throwing your artwork there for a critical view and having people respond to you. Sometimes it's okay if people say offensive things, live through it, build like a thicker skin, like a coat, and say, you know what? All right, I'm not going to disregard this person, but I'm going to listen to the rest of the input, and I'll succeed as an artist.
And it's funny because I see criticism as, okay, it's objective. Art is subjective. So just because somebody doesn't like it, you know what? I'm going to have 10 people that may like it. Art's supposed to make you feel something. You know what I mean? So I tend to I'll listen to a criticism, but I'm not going to internalize it because I know what I've put into it. It's just their opinion. And you have to remember that it's just an opinion. It's not a personal attack. It's just what they feel about the piece. So let me tell you this little thing. So I don't know if you saw my drawing of Venom that I did. It was in color pencil.
No, I don't think I have.
It's on my website, but I did this really fantastic drawing of Venom. And there was a 10-year-old boy. I just was at a show last week, and I said, did you want to buy it? It was like $10 for a print. And the mom was like, well, do you want it? And he said, no, Mom, I don't want it. And she's like, why? And he goes, because it's not realistic enough. And it's funny because it actually really is. And I thought it was humorous. I didn't take offense to it, but just his interpretation that it wasn't realistic enough was funny. And if you were to see it, which I'll try to send it to you after the show, it's just humorous to me. Yeah. So it's just an opinion.
Yeah, and it's weird how like people's minds work with what clicks in your brain, and like you respond to something this particular way and respond to something else completely. Just take Star Wars fans for example. A lot of people, oh my God, sequels are the greatest things. We love them. Who are you? Even if you created this thing, you are the director. Who are you to tell other people how to interact with it?
Right.
It's in the beholder's eyes. It's okay for somebody to say, like, look, as long as they're not being venomous about it, like, look, I just don't like it. It's like, okay, all right, but I love it. Rey is my hero. She's such a powerful character. That's what it's supposed to do. And I think partially why I started my YouTube channel and also Facebook group is to bring this mature level of conversation without the hype, without the blowing things out of proportion and getting physical or verbal with people. It's okay to tell me why you dislike something. Right. Don't crap on the artist that went and created this thing because they put their best effort into it. Just tell me what the problem is, what you don't like, what you respond to. And I think that honestly makes Star Wars in general, or all art, better. Where we all can come to the round table and discuss what we thought works and doesn't work.
And I would, if people would go more into that with that same mindset with world problems or everything like that, you know how much, nicer places would be. Or just scrolling through social media. Just because somebody has an opinion doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just an opinion.
Exactly. Thank you. Michelle, it's been a pleasure. Once again, my podcast doors are always open for you. If you'd like to do this again, I'll be more than happy. Thanks so much for coming in and talking about this. If you have final words for your fans, once again, I will include all the links in this video and in my video description below so people know where to find your art. But if you have final words for all the fans, please go ahead.
May the force be with you, for one, and continue. If you are a young artist out there, never stop drawing and never let criticism affect you, and continue to draw what you love. Draw what you love. And
let's get hyped for that Kenobi show. Let it be the best Star Wars ever.
Do this.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for checking us out and staying tuned with this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Please go ahead and check out Michelle's links that I'll provide in this video. Some brilliant stuff out there. You can order prints. You could check out her wonderful pet portraits and comic book hero set and just Star Wars artwork that was really took me just a second on Facebook to say, I want to talk to that person. She does some awesome Star Wars work. And we'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone.
May the force be with you.